pronounce the acronym for every day in Middle Georgia is Armed Forces Appreciation Day?
Chop chop.
I can.
You got it?
Adimjifad.
What you got, Joe?
Adimjifad.
Really? No one else?
No,
well, I guess they gave it to you, so.
Yeah, I can.
It used to be
I'm not
Air
from
Force.
Warner Robins, so I'm glad that y'all know how to pronounce it. I could get through the first part. So we're going to go on and we're going to do some more questions, more city issues questions. Again, you have 1 minute each for these, and these, the first three will have been submitted from our readers. The first one, or really your fourth question, comes from Linda Carnes. She's 59 and retired. She says, what will you do to provide transportation to help elderly and handicapped be more independent? We're going to start with Mr. Joe Musselwhite on that one.
Okay, Christina, thank you. We're going to partner up with other agencies that are funded by the government, by our tax dollars already. People with indigent care and things of this need, there's a couple of them in our area now. We will talk with them and partner with them and get the service needed to the people that need it. We have some of that going on now through our block grant program. We actually give funding for that purpose to local agencies. In the last couple of years, that funding has been cut to these agencies, and I will get the funding back to them where they can help us like they have in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Musselwhite. Mr. Randy Toms, what would you do to provide transportation?
Well, the first thing I would do is care enough about them to look into every possible avenue to get them transportation. They're an important part of our community. They're actually a larger part of a community than some people may want to believe. So I think we need to look into every area. We need to look into private organizations that are already doing that kind of work. We need to look into the possibility of partnering with churches to provide that service, community groups that have transportation available to do that. We need to also look at the possibility of public transportation if that's necessary. I don't know that that's the answer, but I think we need to care enough to be willing to look at every possible avenue available.
Thank you, Mr. Toms. Mr. Brashear, what would you do to provide transportation to the elderly and disabled?
Yes, certainly a good question. I have gone and met personally with the Middle Georgia Coalition for Agency for Services. Sat and discussed with them, looking at other areas that they provide transportation services for, and gotten a few bare bones estimates of the cost of those. And I would continue to pursue that avenue. We do not have the infrastructure on Watson or Russell to allow us to run mass transit systems. But we could certainly use 15-van passenger vans, in and out of the neighborhoods to take our citizens where they need to go. We did it to ourselves. The predominance of our people that need the services are on the northeast side of town, and the facilities and the services that need the locations are southwest. So that's my approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brashear. Mr. Chalk, can you tell us what would you do to provide transportation?
Well, we do have need for transportation by many people, not only elderly and handicapped, but some of the people that can't afford transportation. I would like to look at this issue more as a mobility issue. Some people have even contacted me regarding sidewalks in the north side of town, how they can get pedestrian from one point to the next, but just specifically with elderly and handicapped, we have services that provide point-to-point transportation, and we need to continue to help those services. The city has cut some of the funding to those services. We need to see about them working cooperatively together, and then us helping them service this need. And then at some point we will grow to where we will have a route type transportation, but I don't think we're there yet.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chalk. And Ms. Folse, what would you do to provide transportation?
we need to form a committee, I think, first of all, and so we are aware of where the people who are shut-ins, like senior citizens, that don't get out, and they rely on Meals on Wheels for their meals. I think volunteers are probably the best source to organize and to help with transportation starting out on this kind of situation. So I think we need to be aware where the seniors are and work with the police department on that.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Folse. Mr. Lee, what would you do to provide transportation?
Can you hear me, Christina?
I sure can.
Okay. What I would do to provide, first of all, we would take advantage of the resources that we all have in regards to in collaborative partnership with the city, different transportation organizations here, nonprofit organizations that do assist seniors as well as those who are disabled. I do believe that we can do a better job at informing the community of the services that are available. And true enough, some funding has been cut with some of those for some of those services, and I do believe that that's why it's important to have additional revenue streams so we can have finances to fill in the gaps when cuts do come up, just like what we're going through now. That's the importance of. That's where economic development comes back in, and collaborative partnerships, and have creating relationships where everybody will benefit from that.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And our next.
I keep muting Christina.
Someone, I won't say any names, keeps clicking on the mic for me.
I apologize. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. So, our next question is from another reader who opted not to give her name, but she's a 63-year-old resident. She asked, what will you do about drugs and crime? And we're going to start with Mr. Toms.
Well, I mean, I think the simple thing on that is, I say simple, it's not simple. I've been working around police officers long enough to know that nothing's simple in that area. But what we need to do is we need to get our police department back up to its proper staffing. These guys and ladies in the police department are just extremely overworked. They're great, and they do a great job, and as I've said in past, I've seen them work on the street, and I've seen them work in the courtroom, and I've seen the videos, and I've heard the audios of the work they do. And we need to give them the proper training, the proper equipment they need to get out there and do the job that they're capable of doing. We have to get on this. I remember several years ago when a particular family member of mine was elected district attorney, and they asked him what he was going to do about the war on crime. And he said, we don't have a war on crime or war on drugs. We have a disagreement with it. And we need to start a war on drugs, and we need to start a war on crime, and not just a disagreement. And we need to knock this problem out now. But the way we do that is by providing the police officers that we need.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Toms. Mr. Brashear, what will you do about drugs and crime?
I agree with Mr. Toms relative to the fact that we need to get our patrol officers and our police departments up to full capacity enforcement.
Community policing, to help police presence.
Mr. Brashear?
I hear somebody talking in the background.
That would be Daron Lee, I believe it is.
I can't hear who's speaking.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Starting back over again with that, I agree with what Mr. Toms has stated, that we need to get our police department up to full staff that we're budgeted for currently, and then see whether we need to increase those staffing. But the other thing that I think we need to do is we need to partner with our district attorneys and with our Houston County authorities, and to ensure that we, if you do a crime in the city of Warner Robins or in Houston County, you're going to do the time. I like the fact that we use banishment, for some of these prolonged criminals to get them out of town. But if we crack down and make sure that if you have a crime in the city of Warner Robins or in Houston County, that were to get around fairly quickly. So I would think that that would be a good deterrent or a good way to decrease the amount of crime in our city.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brashear. Mr. Chalk, what will you do about drugs and crime?
Well, we do have an increased issue of crime here. Our city has grown 38% in the last decade or so. We've increased crime by 16%. And you'd expect an increase in crime just by the sheer numbers. However, we haven't increased our police officers. We need to allow our police officers to be more proactive addressing some of these issues, going after some of the criminal elements in the neighborhoods, start clearing up some of those areas, provide presence. Right now, police officers are working working long hours, 12 hours a day and longer in many cases. They're trying and doing very well with the resources that they have, but we need to do better in giving them more resources, specifically increasing the manning, 10, 20, 30 people over the coming years. We need to allow them to be proactive. We need to work with neighborhoods and neighborhood watches to get the citizens involved and start opening those lines of communication. If everyone is out there is watching and reporting to the police and we have sufficient police officers, we can address this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chalk. Ms. Folse, what will you do about drugs and crime?
Hello?
Ms. Folse, what will you do about drugs and crime?
Okay, I thought my phone was dead. I'm sorry. I think that we have to just set a tone and say we're not going to tolerate it. I'm very upset about what happened Tuesday at Dimitri Street. And regardless of whether that is black on black crime, it's really sad that there was no one there to help that poor man that was shot in the leg. And we've got 20-year-olds that are marauding neighborhoods that have nothing to do with their resorting to crime. We just have to involve neighborhood watch a lot more, and we have to get some more police patrols and to help the neighborhood and keeping you busy. I think, like I said yesterday, I think we've got to have a job corps during the summer and figure out how they have jobs. The ones that don't go into service, they've got to have something to do when they graduate from high school.
Thank you, Ms. Folse. And Mr. Lee, what would you do about drugs and crime?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that it is a strategy and it involves more than just the police department, and also involves more than just locking people up and also banishing them from the county. We have to have some type of youth intervention because crime has increased with youth. We have to do something in order to change their mindset where they will not re-enter the law, enter the law and have a track record. Basically, we're trying to change their mindset so they would go out and do positive thing. Also, with youth intervention, we need drug intervention and things of that nature. Basically, equipping people to live better lives and to make better decisions for themselves and turning them from liabilities to assets in this city.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Musselwhite, what would you do about drugs and crime?
Well, throughout my campaign here, I've been briefed on several drug houses. Some of them are, if they tell you about 8, probably 2 of them are really active.
I'm sorry, just
houses.
a second, Mr. Musselwhite. Mr. Lee, I apologize, but we can hear you on our side, and I think it's confusing. It's a little bit confusing on our end. So if you can
I'm trying,
be respectful of.
But then when you say, no, it's not I'm being disrespectful. I'm saying when I mute, it's somehow I mute you as well. That's why, and that's so I'm not trying to, when I don't mute, then you hear me.
I understand, but we're not having the problem with anyone else.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Musselwhite, can you continue? What will you do about drugs and crime?
Well, as I was saying during my campaign, I've been briefed on some drug houses, and I've been around long enough to know that everything you hear. There's two sides to every story. Probably if I've been told about 6, 2 or 3 of them are actually where drug activity's going on. But the answer to the question is I would meet with the police chief and with the drug task force we have in Warner Robins and say, I've been told we have a problem in this area. I want it looked into. What do y'all need to do the job? How can I help you? Whatever resources or equipment, or even we'll call Houston County to help. I mean, we're all in this together. But I think the answer to it is just taking a proactive move and saying, we're coming after you. If you're selling drugs, we're going to investigate it and put you in jail.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Musselwhite. And our final question comes from Mr. Joe Rice. He's 63 and retired. He had quite a few questions, but we picked just one. He says, what will you do to bring more jobs to Warner Robins that are not connected to Robins Air Force Base? And quote, because it is not guaranteed that the base will always be here, nor will the restaurant business. And we'll start with Mr. Brashear.
Thank you, Joe. That's an excellent question. Over the course of the last 6 months, I've been working very diligently with individuals up in Macon and others around, first and foremost, get the longest runway in the eastern part of the United States designated for a dual-use runway. So we'd have the capability of bringing commercial charter freight line aircraft in and out of Robins Air Force Base, utilizing our skill set in logistics, our skill sets in aircraft maintenance, and the areas around the north end of the base, which is we now own through the repurchase of the encroached area, and build distribution centers up on that end of the base. Fly big freighters in to Robins, unload them, and distribute it out of the smaller airport in Macon. So that would be my approach.
Thank you, Mr. Brashear. Mr. Chalk, what would you do to bring more jobs to Warner Robins that are not connected to Robins Air Force Base?
Well, as I've said before, we do things really well here, such as aerospace and logistics, and we need to continue to do that well on Robins Air Force Base. But we need to diversify and bring things outside the fence that are both supporting Robins Air Force Base and supporting commercial endeavors. Logistics is going to be a big growth area for us, I believe, in the future with the Savannah port expanding. We have opportunity to be a transshipment point and a management area for some of those efforts. We need to grow those jobs, and we need to have a vision to go get those things. If you're doing something well, grow on the things you do well, and that's aerospace and logistics. If you're a baker and you bake great cakes, you want to go ahead and start diversifying, do cupcakes or other baked goods. You don't want to do something totally different. So we're going to grow on the strengths that we have and start moving industry and growing industry outside of Robins Air Force Base, but work that is similar. And we're going to do that regionally, working with the areas around us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chalk. Ms. Folse, what will you do to bring more jobs that are not connected to Robins Air Force Base?
Well, yes, that is part of the mayor's job. You have to create a climate for economic investment and people to want to relocate here and invest in Warner Robins. It involves marketing Warner Robins. We should be a destination city for business, for arts and sciences. It takes involvement in promoting these things.
I'm sorry, Ms. Folse, are you finished?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Folse. And Mr. Lee, what will you do to bring more jobs to Warner Robins that are not connected to Robins Air Force Base?
Well, first of all, you have to make the environment marketable. We have to complete some of the projects that we do have on the table, as well as clean up the bind. We have to beautify the area and actually get from behind the desk and get out of the office and go out and build relationships with different people who are actually owners of the CEOs and owners of the private industry, as well as do what we can to help the base be used at its most optimum level, like Mr. Brashear said, having that dual usage, and that would be a great thing because you're bringing in private industry into the base that would really turn this into a major distribution hub that would also create jobs as well. We have to take advantage of other resources around us, the rail system, the airport, the highways that we have, and also we have to continue to collaborate with the entities in this region to grow Warner Robins to be a better Warner Robins than what it is right now.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Musselwhite, what would you do to bring more jobs to Warner Robins other than those connected to Robins Air Force Base?
Well, I agree with Mr. Brashear in one area here. We need to bring heavy cargo in to the base, and of course we can take it to the port. Also, we got 1,000 acres that it's being purchased through the 2012 SPLOST that was passed in March of 2012 down below Purdue Chicken. It's a beautiful piece of land. It's right on Highway 341 in the spur there, which ties to the coast. It's 1,000 acres of land that is for industrial development. There's $18 million in the joint SPLOST of the entire county to develop this area. My plan is to work with all the surrounding mayors and commission chairmen and form a coalition and advertise our city and our county and market it and get a big industry in there.
Thank you, Mr. Musselwhite. And Mr. Toms, what would you do to bring more jobs to Warner Robins other than those connected to Robins Air Force Base?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of things that are going on in the city of Warner Robins that are good. I think we've got some good economic and financial things going on in Warner Robins, such as the thing that Mr. Brashear talked about, and that's been talked about for quite a while. I think we need to move on some of these things and get them done. I think we need to market our city. We need somebody in the mayor's office that can work with other governments, other government officials, the Chamber of Commerce, and market the city of Warner Robins in an effective way so that we can pursue corporations, manufacturing businesses that are looking for a place to relocate. And Warner Robins is an ideal community to relocate in, not just because we're a great place to work, live, and raise a family, but because we're ideal in location as well. To 75, 16, to what's going on in Savannah. I think it's just a perfect area for us, and we need to market that and pursue new business in this area.
No, I can't.
Thank you, Mr. Toms. The next series of questions will be different for each of you. They're questions that my editors and I have come up with for you. We're going to start with Mrs. Folse. Your question is, you have several citations for failing to follow the city code. How do you assure residents you'd follow the city protocols governing the mayor's office?
Well, the one that you're referring to is a code that really cannot be enforced. It's something they have to go house to house and check everybody's home to see if they're complying. I can run off at least 20 people right off the top of my head that I know that are over the limit in that situation.
Thank you, Ms. Folse. Mr. Lee, your question is, you've been on council for a full term, but I can only point to MLK as a pet project you've been able to push the city to complete. Your question is, you have talked about cleaning up the city, but your job for 20 years has been Public Works Director. What prevented you from doing that in your former position, and how would being mayor change that?
Well, in my former position, I wasn't over code enforcement. We're going to start in Pauletta Gardens and evaluate what's in there and move forward with cleaning this up, notifying the property owners, and getting this structure removed and doing things of this nature. This is nothing new here. We took down 2 houses in the 90s. This is just something that stopped a great cleanup done here in the past 20 years. The fire department, Randy Toms used to train, they trained firefighters burning down houses, EPD.
Like, for example, promotions. I don't have a problem as mayor going to the council and explaining something to them. You know, one thing I know is that if somebody, I don't know that the mayor needs the responsibility or the authority to fire a department head. I don't have a problem with that. I just think that in day-to-day operations, that the mayor needs to be able to go from department to department and make sure that things are done. But I do think that when it comes to something so extensive as firing a department head, I do think that the mayor should confer and maybe even be able to convince 3 of the council members that that needs to be done. Me personally, whether I had the authority or not, I wouldn't do it without conferring with council.
Thank you, Mr. Toms. Mr. Brashear,
Yes, ma'am.
Your question is, if you would abandon your council seat in the middle, well, if you would leave your seat in the middle of your term, how do you ensure residents you would complete the 4 years as mayor?
Well, we have geared part of our campaign to the younger voters, principally over the summer as we use social media. As you said, social media is the way campaigns are moving in the future, and we utilized every bit of that. It's cost-effective and very useful. The more voters, those that are generally 40 and above, I'm one of you.
Followers. Let me see here. His name, he tweeted us. His name is @MattLovesYoohoo on Twitter. He asked, who would do a more effective job of hosting a thriving minor league baseball team, Macon or Warner Robins? Mr. Lee.
Indeed, we will do. Well, we're not weighing cities against each other. I think we're going to take a regional approach. Good question. We have the facility. We have the mindset, and Warner Robins is known for sports. We've shown that we support sports in a major way, football, baseball, and we just get enthusiastic, encouraged, and very supportive of anything that has to deal with sports. And if a minor league team came to Warner Robins, Georgia, I do believe we'll receive them in more ways than one. We'll support them physically, from my appearance, and also financially. We'll do what we can, because it'll be a win-win. They would benefit from being here, and we would also gain an extra revenue stream somehow from them being here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Mr. Musselwhite.
Same
Who would
question.
do a more effective job of hosting a thriving minor league baseball team?
Well, we haven't had our chance yet. The others have already failed. And I'm in favor of minor league baseball team. It needs to draw from a lot of people. It's a regional thing. I'm all in favor of it as long as it's private enterprise. I'm not in favor of the city of Warner Robins going into baseball business. I would not put that burden on the taxpayers of the city.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Musselwhite. And Mr. Toms, who do a better job, Warner Robins or Macon?
Well, I'm a competitive person, and I don't mind taking competition on. I think everything we do needs to be with a Middle Georgia regional perspective. I think that's important. But I think to answer the question and not try to veer off of it is that Warner Robins would do a better job, because Warner Robins is a very athletic-minded, very community-minded city, and I think as far as fan support, we could do a great job at that. I think as far as including the other cities and other counties in our area to come out and be a part of it without trying to, rub in their face that we're better at it than anybody else. I think we would make it a regional and community involvement. But I think Warner Robins, if we're comparing, I think Warner Robins can do a better job at just about anything. So that's where I'm going to stand.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Toms. Mr. Brashear, Warner Robins or Macon, who would manage the most effective minor league baseball team?
Beyond a shadow of a doubt, would be our international city of Warner Robins. During the course of the last couple of weeks, I had a number of different conversations with personalities out of Macon and Bibb County, and they agreed that if minor league baseball was going to come back into the Middle Georgia area, it would have to be done either in extreme South Bibb County or in Houston County, Peach County, here along our corridor. So beyond a doubt, we would be the best place to do that. Look at our Southeastern Little League tournament that we put on for 2 weeks every year. The number of people that attend those, we can have 15,000 people out there for a Little League ball game. So we could certainly get 3,000 or 4,000 night turnout for a minor league baseball game. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brashear. Mr. Chalk, I think I know the answer by now, but Warner Robins are making.
In my best Dick Vitale, you kidding me, babe? Warner Robins. We would do a great job, as proven with the Southeastern Little League, as proven with our youth sports, as proven with so many other great things. The volunteerism here in Warner Robins is awesome, and we would do a great job of hosting a minor league baseball team. I think it would add a great flavor to our city. I enjoyed minor league when I lived in Augusta, Georgia. It's a great opportunity for us to get out and have fun on a summer night. We do a wonderful job at it. I don't mind little rib jabbing between friends. That's part of being in the military, Army, Air Force. You poke at each other, but in the end, you got everyone's back. So that's the way we're going to do it here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chalk. And Ms. Folse, are you going to change it up for us? Is it Macon or is it Warner Robins?
Well, Christina, that's a really easy question. Of course, Warner Robins would be awesome at getting a minor league baseball team. I have a granddaughter that's on scholarship in Atlanta in sports, so I'm a big sports enthusiast. If you look at Macon, they don't even support their high school football teams very well like we do. Of course, it takes millions and millions of dollars to get a stadium like that. I mean, look what happened in Macon. They have a field, and they lost their minor league team. It is something to consider, and it certainly would bring great economic development to our city.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Folse. And that is all for our questions today. We're going to give each of the candidates 2 minutes for a closing statement. And we're going to start with Mr. Musselwhite.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and to talk, and everyone that listens. And Christina did a good job of asking questions, and people that ask questions send in questions to be asked. We appreciate that. We covered a lot of ground today. We decided we need to clean up Warner Robins. We all agree on that. We need to get the blight out. We need to enhance the old downtown area and do something about the speeders and the drug houses. These are problems we have. These are in every city. Nothing's ever going to change until somebody says, let's sit down and talk. This is where we're going to start, and I hope the end is near to solve these problems. We've been talking about some of these things for years now, and nothing's been done. And as your mayor, I assure you, my first day in office, we're going to take steps to move forward in every direction we talked about today. And I encourage each and every one of you to vote for Joe Musselwhite on November the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. Musselwhite. Mr. Toms, give us a 2-minute closing statement.
Well, Christina, thank you. Thank you to the Macon Telegraph for hosting this event. Thank you to the people that sent in questions and cared enough to do that. Thank you for the folks out there listening. Thank you to the other candidates for being involved in this. And there's been a few technical difficulties, even on my part. I'm on a cell phone and my battery's dying, but I have it plugged in. That hadn't helped a whole lot, but we're getting there. But I just wanted to tell people that we are at a critical point in time in the city of Warner Robins. Having been here my whole life, that means something to me. It means something to everybody. I'm not trying to shortchange anybody else's love for this city. I'm just telling you that mine runs deep. I've been here forever, and I want to see Warner Robins thrive. I think we're the best city anywhere around. I chose to come back here, get married, and raise a family here because I love this city. I've served this city for all of my adult life, and I want to continue serving this city in the capacity of mayor. And I think that right now, where we are with the possibility of Brack coming in the next few years, what we need to do is we need to make sure that the city of Warner Robins looks the best it can when people look across from that Air Force Base. And I think that what we need is we need a leader that has the ability to go in and work with people, who has a history and an experience of working with people, not just in the local level, not just in the fire department, but throughout the state, who has the experience like I do of working with firefighters, fire chiefs, legislators throughout the state to get things accomplished for something sometimes it doesn't even involve me, but just the fact to be a part of it. And I have that kind of experience to pull people together. I think the citizens deserve the services that they're paying for, and I'm the leader that can bring those services to fruition. So I ask for your vote between now and November the 5th, and on November the 5th to be the next mayor of Warner Robins. Please vote Randy Toms for mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Toms. Mr. Brashear, a 2-minute closing statement.
Yes, thank you, Christine. Today's forum has been quite interesting, quite entertaining, and I hope that our viewers have had an opportunity to really get to know each and every one of us a little bit better. First and foremost, my top priority is to protect Robins Air Force Base, to ensure that we can do as well as possible if there is another round of BRAC or if there's not. But there's things that we, the city, need to do to improve our city that will help our position with the base realignment and closure. The second thing that I focus most certainly on is we need to create jobs for our next generations. We've all seen the city grow 38% over the last 10 years plus, and we're continuing to grow in the middle Georgia area. So we need to create jobs so our children don't graduate from high school, go off to college, and have to go somewhere else to find work. You know, here is a couple of my reasons for why I'm running for mayor. These are my grandsons, Ryland and Tucker. Their mother and dad love it here in Houston County. We love it here in Houston County, and this is why we chose to make Houston County our home. And so that we want to make sure that what we leave for our grandchildren is far better than what we found when we got here. So I appreciate your support and hope that you would vote for me for the mayor of Warner Robins beginning next Tuesday, October the 15th through November the 5th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brashear. Mr. Chop, 2-minute closing statement.
Hi, yes, Christina, thank you very much for doing this and using technology to get us all together, and Macon.com and Macon Telegraph for hosting this. It's been useful, beneficial, and enjoyable. I want to close by pointing people to my website, chuckchalkformayor.com. We have pushed out there the Warner Robins vision for 2024. When I walk into office on January 1st, this is the mission and the strategic priorities that I want to start pushing and working with council to polish these off, get their input, and coming up with a final product so that we can start moving forward. Our strategic priorities, we want financial and economic development, financial health and economic development, mixing the right way so we're not overburdening any sector of our city. We need to ensure we're growing and increasing the tax base, our economic development, bringing in more jobs, quality jobs for all members. We also need a customer-focused government. We can't sit here in City Hall and say that we know all the answers. We need to ensure that we're talking to citizens, we're talking to council, we're talking to the workers, focusing on those customers, the people that we serve here in this. And we need to drive towards a sense of community, working with schools, working with community leaders, working with the chamber business leaders, working on transportation, and developing a sense of community here in Warner Robins. Those are the 3 strategic priorities I see that we will move toward a vision of being a great place in our nation to do aerospace and logistics while also being a great place to live, work, and raise a family. So I ask for you and your vote beginning October 15th for early voting at City Hall, and then on November 5th at your polling location. Please vote for Chuck Chalk for mayor because we do need a brighter tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chalk. Ms. Folse, can we get a 2-minute closing statement?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I thought my phone was cut off again. Okay, thank you, Christina, for all of your hard work that you've done at the Macon Telegraph to host this forum technologically. And people can use the video. I get the ideas. I'm really humbled to be among 5 wise gentlemen. It takes a lot of work to run for office. So I'm really pleased to be to have such a wonderful campaign. My idea of being mayor is to put a happy and compassionate face on the city, while at the same time I will offer sensible and conservative solutions to our problems. I think that sometimes we're not allocating our resources the best, so some things do need to change, and some of the projects that don't seem to be finished, they linger on and on. For example, I know that Alberta Road from Houston over to Centerville, that was scheduled to be widened to a 3-lane road, and that was back in 2006. That's 7 years ago. I don't know what happened to that money and what the problem is there, but we need to look at the waste and the spending and how we're spending the money, and just revisit. I understand that the county has told us we're not going to have any more SLOSS money until we finish some of these projects. So that's really important. Like I said, we're at a turning point in our city. We are nicknamed the international city. I think we need somebody that has traveled, that can speak another language, that can fit into that nickname. And I have traveled abroad, and people are people, and everyone, regardless of their status.
Thank you, Ms. Folse. Thank you. Excuse me. And finally, Mr. Lee, give us a 2-minute closing statement, if you can.
Thank you so much, Christina, making .com and making Telegraph. Indeed, this has been a great fellowship today. A lot of great things, a lot of great points have been touched on today. Many things where in the end the city of Warner Robins will benefit. But what separates Daron Lee from the rest of the field? I have been prepared. I've been prepared. I have finished different leadership schools. I've been prepared. The citizens, they have invested money in training so I can go forth in professional development, bringing forth leadership and management that will get people, that will bring forth teamwork, collaborative efforts. We have invested time in creating collaborative relationships in other municipalities, not only here but in the state, in D.C. And it's time to reap what we have sown. The citizens have invested in me, and it's time for them to see a return on their investment. I am prepared. I know what's going on, what needs to be addressed in City Hall. I don't have to get in City Hall in the mayor's position to find out. We don't have time to find out what's going on. I know what's going on. I'm just not in the position to implement the decision, the directives, in order to bring forth the synergy that's needed in this region in order to catapult us into that level of advancement, that level of economic development, that level of supporting BRAC and the Robins Air Force Base, that level of actually turning this city into the international city it has been targeted and named to be. I'm Daron Lee. I look forward to your support November 5th. Okay.
And thank you to all you candidates, especially for sticking through this with some of the technological difficulties we had. It's been a little bit over 90 minutes, so for those of you who stuck with us, thank you as well. For those who either caught the end or didn't get to see everything, or if you have friends who didn't get to catch any of it, it'll be available on macon.com/elections up to the elections. With that being said, please get out and vote. Doesn't matter who you vote for, but early voting starts next Tuesday, like some of the candidates said, and ends on November 5th when our new mayor of Warner Robins will be selected. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter at WRIGHT, now NOW86, with hashtag the number 4 WR Mayor for your latest on the mayor's race, and I also tweet about local government here in Houston County and Peach County. Thank you again for tuning in.